Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Info Live session on how you can come to Australia on a business, innovation and investment visa. As you know, Australia is a land of opportunities indeed. There are many cities that one can call home to. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass the floor to three of our registered migration agents. First, there will be Glenn, and then we'll pass it on to Manshil and of course, Davinda. So Glenn, over to you. If you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Glenn, and I've been working in this field for many years, especially in the education area for over 20 plus years. So I'm very familiar with the visas of how students actually come to Australia to look for that migration pathway. That has become very difficult, and we're now slowly exploring for a lot of our students possible business migration pathways as well. So my expertise is mainly in the students area, but we are also able to assist students in different areas. And I'll pass over to, hang on a sec. I'll pass over to Manshil now. And yep, sorry, I just have to put my
Over to you, Manshil.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm just wondering whether we should wait for a few more clients. I see a lot of empty spaces. Do you want to give it 5 minutes? I know. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Hamid.
Yeah, that's all right. This session is recorded, so the rest are waiting. So might as well we carry on and then we can play it back.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
My name is Manshil. I'm a solicitor in New South Wales in Australia and also here in Malaysia. I've been a migration agent for many years as well. That's just a brief introduction that I wish to give at this moment.
Davinda?
Hello, everybody. My name is Davinda. So I'm an immigration lawyer here in Australia. I came to Australia 11 years ago on a business visa myself. So I have run maybe various business in the past as well. So I have quite a bit experience in business visas and all that.
All right. So look, it's pretty fluid. We would like to hear from our panel of registered migration agents on what's the difference between some of the visas out there. We'll always hear 132, 188, 888, what are they actually, essentially? So I'm gonna leave it to the panel to sort of give us a quick overview. If anyone has a question on some of the information shared, feel free to sort of jump in and ask. And if some of the information you'd like to take this on further into a more private discussion, we can organize for that too later on. So yeah, not to scare everyone, but it is very difficult to apply for the investment, innovation and investment visas to come in. But it's never impossible, so maybe I can pass the floor to Glenn to give us an overview.
Thanks, Sonia. I think with what's happening in the world at the moment, Australia is currently one of the safest countries to be in because we've actually managed COVID very, very well. So we're starting to see a lot of people thinking about, coming to Australia and what's the best way to do it prior to the borders opening. Through my years of experience, I found that this is probably the best opportunity for people to actually explore coming into Australia. But you also have to be careful because there are a lot of people out there who will take advantage of this situation and only give you what we call piecemeal information, which means they give you a little bit of information, they get you excited, then you put all your money and effort into it, and then it falls through. And in the past few months, we've actually been dealing with a few clients that have actually been brought down the wrong pathway, and it has cost them significantly, because what you don't want to do is to be given just enough information to allow you to come over, but then you have no expectations of what is required to actually maintain the visa requirements so that you can transition to a permanent pathway. The government is very smart. They've changed a lot of things over the years. So something that was possible 3 years ago is no longer possible. And the thing about the Australian migration law is that it's constantly changing. You cannot expect someone to tell you something today and expect in 6 months for it not to change. And I think that's the difficulty, because some of these visa processes can take quite a long time to obtain it. So what we do is we try to pre-qualify you to let you know in stages whether you qualify. And if you do qualify, then we allow you to say, okay, now we can move on to the next stage, rather than promise you something at the end whereby you're not going to get. So we'll guide you through that session, and not many migration agencies would do that because it's not profitable for them. But for us, we are trying to help our clients to meet the outcomes so that when they're successful, they will then refer us to many other clients out there. And that's how we've been succeeding all these years, mainly through referrals. And, it's something that, you're not a trained law specialist, so you won't know when things changes. And that's why we have a panel here, and we bounce ideas off each other to actually help each other to, navigate through this, all these changes. Okay.
Would Manshil or Davinder like to add on that?
Yes, just continuing from Glenn's comments. So there are various visa streams to come on a business visa. So it all depends on how much money you can invest into, getting up the setting of visa option. So it's virtually starts from 800,000 and goes up to 15 million odd. So everybody have different circumstances. So I would like to know the person who is interested to apply for a business visa, how much money they have and how much money they can invest into setting up a business in Australia.
Davinder, I do have a question on the side. So to mention that visas, these visas will allow a person with business experience to sort of invest in Australia to get the permanent residency. So what kind of business experience would meet the criteria?
So if I just look at the basic criteria for the first visa option, which is 188. So you have to have a business in your own country or wherever you're living at the moment for at least 4 years. So you have to show that business experience, and you have to show a minimum turnover of 500,000 Australian dollars within the last 2 years. So those are the basic, and obviously you have to be under 55 years of age, and you have to show that you have $800,000 assets, which can be transferred to Australia within 2 years of your visa being granted.
Okay, all right. Any questions? Anyone has a question on this part? What about other criteria, like age or what kind of setup with the original business in your home country? Do they have certain criteria that they have to meet?
Not really. I think what you have to have a business on for life. You have to be in business for 4 years, and obviously you should have a 50% ownership of that business, and that business must have a turnover of over $500,000. And then obviously you have to meet 65 points, which are I won't say that they're really hard to achieve. They are achievable, yeah, but you have to have a age. You have to be under 55 years of age.
How old?
55.
55. So what if someone...
You can be, sorry if I may interject,
Yes.
you can be above 55 years of age, but the amount of money that you need to invest is higher.
Right.
So, yeah.
How much would that be?
Well, the basic minimum for no age limit would be the significant investor stream, which would require you to invest 5 million Australian into complying investments for 4 years. a minimum of 4 years. Yeah. And there are various categories in which the investment will be put. It's very safe. There is 500,000 into a venture capital fund, 1.5 million in emerging companies, and 3 million in managed funds. You can, for that portion, you can even put it into real property. That means like apartments, houses, that sort of thing. There is a cap for that. There's the figures for that. So I'm wondering whether Mr. Hamid might be able to tell us criteria he would fit under. Are you above the age of, what's your age, Mr. Hamid, if you don't mind us asking? Can't hear. You need to switch off your mute button.
I'll help him.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Actually, it's not for me, the case. It's my brother-in-law, but unfortunately he's not online with us. I think he's 58.
58. Does he have at least 5 million Aussie to invest?
Or perhaps we can take it off a different different platform in terms of the declaration of assets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can work that out.
I think it will be difficult, 5 million. Yeah.
All right. So and Davinder, you mentioned 800,000 is the minimum?
Yes, you have to show that you have your personal and business assets equivalent to 800.
So 800,000, when you bring in the money into Australia, do you have to bring in the whole lump sum of 800,000? And where does that money go to? Does it go straight into a business, or can you sort of have a portfolio of investments, just like what Manshil has shared with us earlier?
You don't have to transfer 800,000 straight to Australia. You have to show that you can, so what I mean by that is, if you come to Australia, you buy a business worth of 400,000, and then you get that remaining 400,000. If you wish, you can buy a house with it, or you don't have to, but you have to buy a business which has a turnover over 300k Australian dollars to meet the criteria for the permanent visa, which is AAA.
Right.
I mean, so on one hand, they say, yeah, you have to have $800,000. They want to know you have the assets behind. If you have to fall on that, otherwise, okay. If you don't, you can bring, say, $400,000, buy a business worth 300,000, and then that should fine. But given when you do apply for AAA, you have to meet 3 criteria. One is you have to have like the 600 personal or net business assets, and you employ 2 Australian or PR citizens, or vice versa. You can have assets worth 200,000, and you have been employing 2 Australian citizens or PR citizens for the 2 years period. Yeah.
Okay. So you've mentioned the 188 visa and then the 888 visa. So I'm assuming the 188 visa is something temporary.
Temporary, correct.
Probably doesn't give you the full rights that a permanent resident would have. And then you're working towards getting the 888, in which during that time period, you're supposed to sort of bring in the funds, get it invested into the right portfolio, and then sort of tick the boxes.
Correct. Yeah. So you have to buy a business. You can start up a business, or you can buy a already operating business.
So if we start up the business, and the business is only what you only put in, say, 80,000 for the business, would that help? And the rest of the money goes into a property.
Yes, that's correct. As I was saying, when it comes to time to apply for permanent visa, so you have to meet 2 out of 3 of the conditions. So one is you have to have $200,000 assets. Second one is you have to have 600,000 personal or business assets. And the third condition is you should have employed 2 Australians or permanent citizens for the 2 years.
Right.
Applying for the permanent visa. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a maximum period of time where someone can sort of transit from the 188 to the 888 visa?
The temporary visa is issued for 4 years. So obviously you have to, within those 4 years, you have to set up a business. You can ask for extension, which can be granted for the 2 years.
Okay. Are there any questions from the floor?
There is the visa that Devinda was talking about was the 180. Considered like an investment visa, where you have to be between 18 and 54 years of age, and you have to have 2.25 million net on with you, and you're ready to invest 1.5 million into state bonds for 4 years. Now, for this, you have to stay in Australia for 730 days for a period of 4 years. Within the 4 years period, you have to stay for 730 days, which is roughly about 2 years. You wait for the bonds to mature, and you can buy an apartment. So this is the 188B. In that 4 years, so once you've done the 730 days and your bonds have matured, after the 4 years, you can convert your 188B to an 888, which is a permanent residence.
I think for the benefit of the listeners, Manchu cut out for about 5 to 10 seconds, and I think she mentioned this is a separate stream of visa based on this 188. Under the 188, there are a few streams, and each one have different qualifying requirements. So the one that Manchu was talking about was the 188B. The one that Devinda was talking about was the 188A.
That's correct.
So how many of the A, B, C, D, E's are there?
There are too many.
That's for the benefit of
those are the two main ones. Those are the two main ones.
And this was what I was referring to in the beginning. The immigration department has made it so complicated that, it's not a straightforward, okay, I'll go to the website, I look at the requirements, okay, that's it. It's finished. I can just apply. And we've had clients that actually did that. They went and applied on their own and they failed. Then they don't understand why they failed. And they kept arguing with us that, no, I meet the requirement because I have all the documents. But the government is very smart in saying, look, this is only the first stage. And there are many, many stages towards getting your permanent residency. And this is how the migration ruling in Australia has transformed over the years, because they build it based on past visas. Past visas might be easy, but they've actually changed it. Now there is a provisional stage whereby you get certain permanent residency rights, but you don't get the full one until you actually get the permanent visa, which is what Devinda was saying with the 888 visa. It's a transition that you have to go through. So it's not just, hey, I want to apply, I've got my 188, thank you very much, see you later. You actually still need to be guided to meet the requirement at the end of the road, because we've had a lot of clients that actually come to us, they've got their first part of the visa and they could miss out on the second stage because they didn't understand the ruling properly. And some agencies will only help you in that first part. But once you're onshore, once you're in Australia, most of them will stop guiding you because, one, it's not their expertise. Two, it really doesn't benefit them to help you to the next stage if you're not going to use them. And I think this is where our experience come in. Among the group here, we've had over 50 years of business experience, not only in Australia, but also in our home countries where we used to be, living. And every single country has a different way of doing business. So we need to understand the way you do business and help you to transition to Australia and how business is operated here. Because, especially most people come in and they buy a restaurant. Owning and operating restaurants overseas is very different from Australia. When you come in, you don't even know that there are labor laws, there are wages requirements, there are, traps to not fall into, like being trapped with a lease that is too high, buying a business that is too expensive. You know, so you might think you meet the requirement, but then when it gets audited, what you thought you paid for is no longer the case. Okay, so this is where we come in, and we want to be able to make sure that, you know, you're not going to jump into Australia blindly after you get your visa.
Thank you. Thanks,
Maybe we
Ben.
can ask Mr. Hamid if he has any other questions.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Or yeah, I think Ban's online, Hamid.
Ban, she's online?
Yeah, she's online.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's good. I've just put aside and sort of given her an opportunity if she has any questions. But I do have one question here. Does it matter whose name I'm applying under? For example, honestly, you know, the investment is actually for my children's future. So how does that work? If I'm making the application under my name, will my children automatically get the same privileges as well throughout
Yes,
the
if your
process?
children are minors, they will get the benefits of your permanent residence subsequently. Yes.
Under 18?
Under 18, and if you're studying over in a university, you can stretch it all the way up to 23.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
if
As long as they're dependent, that means they're still dependent upon you for the university fees and so on and so forth. So if you're, so technically, yes, your kids can come under you once you've got the visa, assuming they're dependent, they're still dependent on you. Yeah.
okay.
not
Your husband as well, obviously. Yeah.
engaged or married, obviously. Yeah.
So if the child is 22 years old, has a part-time job, still going to university, parent is paying for it, for the fees, that child of 22 years of age will then be part of that umbrella.
Depends on how much the child is earning and whether the earnings are enough to pay for the university education. The definitions are dependent. So whether they're dependent upon you. So if they're not earning as much and they're not insufficient for fees and so on, then they can continue to be classified as a dependent. So the term is dependent, yeah?
Okay. So that sort of a dependency test has to be carried out, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. And the other question is, if a child comes in together with the parents on a 188, does the child get to go to school as per the kids who are residents here in Australia? So there will be a big difference in terms of the school fees that they're paying for. So how would we treat that then?
My understanding is that if the child comes from, where the country where Australia has, reciprocal agreements, the child pay the same fees or whatever the, local Australian kid pay. But yeah, so I have to maybe look into that if, child is coming from another country, what are the laws there?
Okay. Okay.
Sonia?
Yes, Hamid.
There's a question in my mind I want to, if it is possible.
Sure.
I want to know if somebody come over here for education, like PhD or master degree for 4 years or whatever, till he completed. And the next step, how he can switch to the business visa and his age is over 60 or over the 55 limits, let's say.
I'll leave that to...
As we mentioned earlier, if you're above 54, then the amount that you need to invest becomes a little higher, yeah? Maybe what you can do is maybe liaise with Glenn and Sonia. Maybe there might be some ways where we can, assist you, having known personally. You may not.
Sorry?
Oh, we've lost mine.
Anshu's dropped out again.
Oh.
Why have I dropped out again? Am I still there?
Yes.
Now you're back on.
Oh, okay, that's strange. Okay. Mr. Hamid, if the funds are insufficient, maybe you might have other assets. There may be something that Glenn and Sonia might be able to work out for you. Yeah. But it's not straightforward. Let me just be very clear about that. Yeah, it's not simple. So maybe have a separate meeting with them, and they might be able to guide you in certain pathways.
Yeah. So Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, if someone's coming over here to study a master's or a PhD program, PhD in particular, you take about 4 or 5 years to complete. And after that, you can get the post-study work visa, another 4 years. by the time if the person turns 60, then the question is, how do we get the person to stay on, right? Can an existing business in Australia then sponsor the person for the right skill set for work? Because I'm assuming the 60-year-old person would have children here already or family living here. So there are a lot of factors to take into consideration, wouldn't there be?
Yes. And once you pass that threshold, it is very difficult. Then depends on your English level.
Yeah.
It then
Your
depends
points.
on whether or not you will be employable in a particular position. There
Health.
are short-term visas available. They're not permanent, and that one has no age limit, but it's very temporary. So in order to go for the permanent visas, it really depends on a specific occupation, and that's pretty much to become a lecturer and to be sponsored by a university. Then can they meet that exemption for age? And that's not guaranteed also, because it is up to the minister to actually work out if that particular person is going to help contribute towards growing Australia. So it really is entirely dependent on the department making an assessment. So it's still not guaranteed. We might look at the legislation. We might say this person qualifies, this person can approach this particular pathway, but at any time, a decision can be made by a case officer who has the same power as the minister, and pretty much you go through years and years of arguing with them. And yeah, so it's not 100% guaranteed pathway.
Okay. Is that all right, Hamid?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but we're probably more complicated than what we've just discussed. And
I have made it more difficult.
indeed, you have. Then again, life is not simple, and all investment cases are typically not easy. That's why you would always need the experts to do it. So even for me, when I came here a long time ago, I had to rely on a registered migration agent to facilitate the process for me to come to Australia. So it's never been easy. All right, just too many fine prints to look into. The legislation is thick. It's very complicated. So yeah, layman like me, I don't have the time to go through it. So these guys know what they're doing, and so yeah, it's best to leave it with them. I've got a question for Federico. So in case of starting a business with an Australian partner, how much money should I invest? If it's 800,000, then 50% comes from me. How does that work? Would that still help meet the criteria that, Davinder, you've just explained to us earlier in the session?
So, can you repeat the question, please? So
okay. So in case, just in case, if I'm starting a business here with an Australian partner, can I invest 50% of invest in 50% of the business?
Qualify for 800. See, it's not how much you have the money invested. It's just like the person has to. So just say he's invested 400,000 in a business, that's fine. But does he have another 400,000 as in assets?
Right. So the person has to establish that he already has the 400,000 from his home country readily available to bring into Australia. Is that right? And it doesn't. So it doesn't matter what business then he goes into, if he's into a partnership or a 50% share of a company. Does it bear any significance?
No, it should be okay. As I said, like you have to have like 800,000 available to transfer.
Okay.
And if he's already business in Australia, which is worth, okay, he has a share of 400,000 and meets the turnover criteria, then he should be fine here.
Okay. Okay.
I think the key here is a lot of people are confused when you say you can buy a business for $400,000. We know that they don't have to come up with the money, and that's what the government is going to sort of require the person to prove. whether you own that asset or whether you've borrowed that funds to actually bring it here. Because what Davinder said is correct. You have to prove that you have that 800 asset. And if you've purchased a business on a 80% loan, then really you've only got 20% into that business as your own. And that way you don't actually, even if you buy a $400,000 business, that value is only 80,000 of your own money. It's not actually the full 400,000. So the investor has to be careful with things like that. If they show that they have the 800,000 in assets and they bring their own 400,000 in and invest into the business, then they would have a settlement arrangement that says, okay, I have 0% loan and I've put the full 100% into, I've put that whole amount into the business. Then the department will take that value. But if it says on the settlement of the business that 80% loan is going to be drawn to actually purchase the business, then you can't prove that that whole 400 is what you put in.
That's good. Because I think your business financials will show as well how much equity you bring in to buy that business, and the balance sheet will show, how much funds are invested by yourself, rather than getting a loan from a local bank or So I was going to go back to Mr. Hamid. When you say your brother-in-law is interested to come to Australia, but given he's 58 years of age, does he have a business in his home country?
Yeah.
And who owns the business?
Himself.
Just by himself, or his children? Has he got children?
Himself. Yeah, he got children. He got 4 children. Yeah.
Okay, and how old are they?
Let me just remember.
Yeah. So that's fine. I'm just going to say, like, if that business is owned by his children as well, then maybe his children can apply for a business visa. Given they will be under the age of 55, then he can come on a parent visa later on.
Actually, he got one daughter. She's studying medicine now. I think 24 maybe now. Yeah.
So
First year of medicine.
What I suggest is maybe one of his child start working within the business, and then in that way that child can come on a business visa, and once he's a PR or Australian citizen, PR citizen, then he can apply for his parents to come on a parent visa, given they meet the balance of family test, which means that depending on where the kids are living. So if there's 2 kids living in Australia, 2 back in Iraq, they meet the business parent visa criteria. Yeah. So that's another way to look at it here.
Yeah, this is important what you're saying, but there is a little bit of noise. I couldn't hear all of it. You said, if I can repeat what I have here. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. You said that if I'm correct, the business can be owned by one of his children. Let's say over 18 years.
Yes.
But what about? I mean, in this case, the business should be under his children's name, isn't it, in Iraq?
I mean, it can be a company, it can be a partnership. So what you can state is that the child is running the business, being a director of that company, or a partner of that, or in a partnership with his father.
I see. It's like a company. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's another way to look at it. I mean, if the age is the big hurdle here, so that's another way to look at it into the future.
Yeah, good point. Yes.
Yep. That's something we can plan ahead, and if the parents want to come here first, there's always other ways of coming in first, you know, through your study pathway, or yeah, I'm sure the boys will think, you know, the team will think of something, but it will have to be based on the profile of the applicant. All right.
Yeah, yeah. This is a good point as well, because you know it depends on the kind of business, what business it is as well. His business is, you know, he's a orthopedic.
Yep. Yep.
So he does operations in hospitals, and he see patients. In this case, how somebody like his daughter, let us say, she's still in the medicine, she has not graduated yet, but I mean, I'm being very specific. I'm not sure if it is okay or not.
I don't see a problem being, so that shouldn't qualify as a business, given they meet the turnover. So if the turnover, so if they have a 500k turnover Australian dollar, I can see them indicate, because if I compare them to Australian, say Australian medical center, it is a business, even if it's owned by 2 doctors or 2.
Is the business worth 800,000 Australian in the first place?
No,
is it worth that?
It could be 200,000, doesn't matter. The asset has to be, altogether it has to be 800,000. So if your brother owns a house which can be valued at 600,000 Australian dollars, and the business is valued at 200,000, that should be sufficient to meet that criteria. The question is does the business have 500,000 Australian turnover
Per year?
I'm sorry?
Per year? 500?
That's correct, per year. So in the last 4 years, if you take in the last 4 years, the 2 years you have to show financials that business has been doing 500,000 Australian turnover.
I see. I have to check this actually.
Yeah, I think that's the significant which you have to criteria.
I see.
Yeah, I'm just cognizant of the time. So I'm just looking at if anyone else has a question. If not, we can sort of just go through the sort of a high-level process, so everyone can sort of anticipate what next. You know, should the team look at some of your documents first and see if you do qualify, and then we move on to the next stage. So maybe one of you guys can help sort of explain that procedure.
Jill, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Was it Glenn or Manchil?
Which procedure again? Sorry. The
Sorry.
internet here is a bit slow.
Yeah, it is. It's not a very good day, isn't it? I'm not sure if we have heavy clouds above us.
Yeah, it's raining very heavily. Yeah, go ahead.
No wonder. So I was just, I mean, I'm looking at the time, so I'm cognizant of the time. I just wanted to know if anyone else has a question. If not, then we'll wrap up with some initial information how we can move on to the next stage. So we're happy to look at some of your documentation. And then the team can sort of ascertain if, yes, you do qualify for this innovation and investment scheme visa to come in. If not, we'll have to think of some other ways. So the initial assessment, would you guys be charging the client, or how would you facilitate this?
I think the very first meeting. Are you in Australia, Mr. Hamid?
Yeah.
You are? Okay, which part of Australia?
Perth.
Oh, you're in Perth?
Yeah.
So perhaps you should go and see either Glenn, Sonia, or Devinder.
Yes.
And
yep. Yeah, that's fine.
and
so maybe this is just general, because we see, as this session is recorded, we will be sharing the session later on. There are a few registered participants who've actually not come on board today, so they would sort of catch up with the watch party later on when we air it. So maybe the initial assessment and confirmation is it's complimentary because we're running this campaign currently. And so once if the documents that you've looked at looks good and you want to request for more, we will then move on to the next step of a thorough review of the documentation. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thorough review would just cost you 500 for us to go through all your documents.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have determined that maybe there is a chance there, we'll go through your documents.
Mm-hmm.
That will be 500, and then after that, if we think you can probably succeed, or your brother-in-law can probably succeed, or your niece, then we will advise you on the various fee processes thereafter.
Okay, so what happens after that? So if everything looks good, you would then what, apply for a state nomination? Is that how it works?
Yeah, we basically collate all your documents, and once your documents are obtained, we will apply for a particular state to nominate your brother-in-law. And once the state nominates you, of course, you go for you get eventually in the long term, you get your temporary residence, which is your 188A or B. And you do your 730 days out of the 4 years. And thereafter, I'm summarizing it, of course, thereafter you get your permanent residence.
Okay.
Automatically, but we will guide you all the way, as in like from the beginning, from the 188, your temporary residence, into your permanent residence, all the way until you have the PR in your hands. That's our role. Yeah.
Okay. So are there any other questions? I'm just going to share a screen. This is who we are. Where can everyone see the screen? So
yeah,
we are here in Australia, and we have primarily been helping our students, as Glenn has mentioned, come to Australia to study, work on their skills. Some of their families then move on to applying for more permanency here in Australia, and that's why we've been helping some of these families with the business investment migration pathway as well. Now, this would be our contact. If you'd like more information, if you'd like to get hold of one of us, we can actually arrange a session with any of our registered migration agents. So, yep. So maybe just write this down, or we'll send this contact sheet to the participants after the session. All right. Are there any other questions from anyone else? Hang on, just let me. Yeah. All right. If no, then we will call it a day. Thank you very much for your time. For those of you who have joined us. And if you have more questions, just, you know how to contact me. All right. Just flick me a message. All right. Thank you, Manshil. Thank you, Glenn, Davinda, Hamid,
everyone.
Federico.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
bye.